Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm your host, Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. We're coming to you live from CES 2025 in Las Vegas, Nevada, and joining me for this segment, we have Gary Shapiro. He's the CEO of the Consumer Technology Association, which is the producer of CES and also the author of Pivot or Die. Gary, it is great to have you with us as always. Thanks for having us. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm curious about this book because we typically cover what's happening on the policy and regulatory framework and not necessarily the tech behind what's happening here at CES. And part of pivoting is being able to manage around that policy formulation and regulatory framework. What do you see as the overarching themes as we think about applying that framework to the emerging technologies that we're seeing at CES?
Wow, that's a great question, Jill. Thanks for having me. Deep. Well, we are in a transitional world right now, and everyone is pivoting. The sense is started because of digital technology itself and the internet, but then with COVID, we all pivoted. But now with artificial intelligence, generative AI, with self-driving, with going to quantum computing as well, with all these different public policies and governments around the world fundamentally changing over a variety of issues, this is a big time. And obviously with incoming President Trump talking about tariffs and all these things he's going to do, there's going to be some very difficult, terrorizing moments for the business community. So the question is how you react to those.
Right.
And you got to prepare, you have to plan, and you're going to make mistakes, but you can't be paralyzed. What I talk about in the book really is that big companies and small companies do have an advantage, they move quicker, but big companies have to play in the game as well. And these technologies, you can't just ignore them. Mm-hmm. You have to start acting, you have to start planning, and you have to realize your competitors are doing the same thing, or companies that you don't even think are competitors will come out and eat you alive.
Yeah, which is so interesting because a lot of our coverage, since we're in what was the EV hall, now it's the electronification of everything as it relates to vehicles. With auto tech innovation, we've learned that it used to take 60 months to go from concept to the production line. Now it's happening in 24 months because of course you're applying Moore's Law and how fast technology evolves. And regulation, it takes time in the US to legislate and to get laws to keep up with this innovation. And then of course you have multiple jurisdictions, another global policy that you have to think about within your framework. It really is challenging whether you're a smaller entrepreneur or you're a multinational company. And for all intents and purposes, whether you're automotive or industrial consumer, everyone's a tech company. You have to adopt this technology.
You said that perfectly. The fact is every company is a tech company, and others around the world are doing things. Now, the advantage we have in the United States is our government is actually relatively slow to start regulating. Europe, regulation is our major export. They want to protect privacy, they want to do all these things, and it really does come at a huge cost because it discourages innovation, especially by smaller companies who can't afford to comply. China's a little bit the opposite direction. They have no regulation of privacy. They have enormous data sets necessary for generative AI, and the government wants to see massive amounts of innovation. And that comes at a cost, though. The US, our job, and other Western democracies, in a sense, the challenge is to stay in the middle. It's important that companies know what's legal, but also don't have to go to the government for permission to innovate. And we also have to make it so small companies can jump in. And we're there now. I think the Congress, Republican and Democrat, has taken a very deliberative approach to AI. They've been listening more than they have been regulating, which is great.
Right.
And companies themselves are evolving their policies. And I think we've done really well the last 30 or 40 years as a country because we haven't let legacy industries come in and destroy markets for new ones.
Yeah, especially those legacy industries are heavily regulated, right? Financial services, healthcare is an example. I think what's interesting is there's two sides of this equation. You have GDPR, which is stringent when it comes to data privacy. Then you have, to your point, China, which is more relaxed, and we're trying to figure out somewhere in between, because fundamentally when we think about privacy, just who we are as a nation, we look at it very different than other areas of the world when you think about encompassing free speech and privacy and what that means. But you also need to comply with other global regulatory regimes. And this formulation is happening right now. And I find that fascinating.
It does seem to be happening at warp speed.
Even from a cyber perspective, all this data, all this emerging technology, the rush internally or externally to go to market, we're figuring all of this out and formulating it now. I think it's a very exciting time for that.
We are, but my job as the paid cheerleader and policy person for the tech industry is to make sure we don't screw it up. And that's what keeps me awake. Because there are dumb proposals which come out, like let's stop all generative AI for 6 months. Remember that one?
Do you know how far we'd fall behind?
Well, that's right. So the good guys will stop and the bad guys go forward. But the fact is that AI is going to help solve all these fundamental problems and help out with cybersecurity and with privacy and things like that. But we do need rules of the road.
Right.
And we need it on a federal way, so not every state's jumping out there to try to say, we're going to regulate you because we can and we're scared. And this particular segment doesn't really understand generative AI. Fortunately for us, we have a tremendous amount of knowledge in US companies and US leaders and a desire to actually do well for the world with that.
Right. Think about the Delta keynote last night. I was blown away. I mean, it sounded like a technology company that was up there, and how the company is leveraging AI and what they're learning from data from their customers. I mean, Joby, that was so interesting, and how they can make the travel experience so much better by leveraging this data and being smart with the application of it. It did not sound like an airline talking up there.
Well, that's the third time Ed Bastian of Delta has keynoted CES, and it took over Las Vegas Sphere, filled it up, and boy, we were blown away sitting through that. And Joby had talking about in a few years or soon we'll be flying little planes to get you to Delta, little helicopter type devices, and everything else, using customer data to have an enhanced experience.
Like Eva's story, that was amazing.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yes, I appreciate the insight as always. Thank you so much for having us at CES, and thanks for joining me from CES. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at